Hello everyone. In this module, we'll be learning about basic businesses workflow or basic business workflow. At the end of the module, you will be able to tell what is a workflow, how workflow is beneficial to you, what is a business workflow, and how should you implement these workflow in order to make your startup a success. Yeah. So the basic definition of the workflow is as follows. A workflow is a sequence of tasks that processes a set of data. Workflows occur across every kind of businesses and industry. Anytime data is passed between human nanosystems, a workflow is created. So basically, it is a sequence of tasks or a chain of tasks that processes a set of data. Suppose you have to print, you are suppose say leader of a very big organization, and you have to get some of your papers copied or printed. So you will give those papers to your secretary. Your secretary will give those papers to the copier guy. The copier guy will go to the machine and then maybe Xerox the papers, bring it back, give it to your secretary, and the secretary will give it back to you. So that process of you giving out the paper and when it reaches the final machine, and when the machine from the machine when it comes back to you, that whole process is defined as a workflow. Now, there are certain types of workflows also. So, workflow types are as follows. Yes, process workflow, case workflow, and project workflow. Now, we'll also understand in depth about all these workflows. Yes, so what is a process workflow? A process workflow happens when the set of tasks is predictable and repetitive. This means that before an item begins the workflow, you know exactly what path it should take. Yeah. So basically, a process workflow is something that is a workflow for a repetitive set of tasks. Let's say, for example, the lift goes up and down in a building, right? The lift can't fly up or lift can't go below the ground. The lift can't go left and right. It will only go up to a certain set of floors and then come back, right? Your daily task is going to the fifth floor and then coming back while you leave the building. When you enter the building, you go to the fifth floor. When you leave the building, you come to the ground floor. So that repetitive set of tasks or that workflow is known as a process workflow. Okay, so these workflows are generally set up to handle an unlimited number of items. Let's say you don't define how many days you'll be using the lift, right? Basically, whenever you come to the building, you will be using the lift to go to the fifth floor, right? So every day, any day, you'll be using that lift to go to the fifth floor and coming back. So that is again an unlimited set or a limited number of items. So that workflow is known as process workflow. Now, what is a case workflow? Now, in case workflow, you don't know the path required to complete the item at the start. The path reveals itself as more data is gathered. Again, that is again the case with your MVP, right? You know the final product, like the final app version or the final software version that you're going to release in the market. Your minimum viable product will have a few basic functionalities from in comparison to your final model. So from that minimum viable product to the final model, you don't know the exact path that you are going to take to reach that final model, right? So as the data is gathered, as the user input is gathered, as the feedbacks are taken, as the iterations are made, so you know the path, and the path reveals itself as to which path you should take or how you should, proceed towards achieving your final software goal or your final product goal, right? Let's say support tickets and insurance claims are again a good example of these cases. Yeah. So similar to process workflows, case workflows can handle any number of items. Yes, again, case workflow is also for a limited number of items, similar to process workflow. Although they are dependent on us or an intelligent bot to discern the right path. Basically, it's us who will guide the case workflow or basically design the case workflow to take the right path. Yeah. Now, the third type of workflow is project workflow. Project workflow have a structured path similar to processes, but there may be flexibility along the way. That means you have a defined project. Let's say you are in school and your teacher has asked to complete your homework tomorrow, and the homework is regarding math, solving a few set of problems. So you know what you have to do, you know how you have to do it, and then you know by when you have to do it. So basically, you have a defined set of plan, you have a defined goal, you have a defined initiation point, you have defined everything. Basically, you just need to map it out. You have to initiate it, you have to plan it, you have to implement it, then you have to close it, right? As shown in this initiation, planning, implementation, closure. Yeah. So let's, by taking an example, let's think about releasing a new version of your website. You can predict with a good accuracy the sequence of tasks required to complete the project, right? You have to basically write a code, buy a domain, stuff like that. You know what you have to do, you know how you have to do it, you just have to implement it, right? However, this project workflow, as the name suggests, is only good for one item because, yes, of course, a project or a project can't be for thousands of items. It's only for one item, of course. Yeah. Now, most resources that we find online will only refer to workflows in the sense of process workflow. But these two, the project workflow and the case workflow, are just as important to consider as much of the work around the office falls into these two categories. Yes. So all of the work that you do in your office, in your startup office, while sitting in your desk, may fall in these two workflow cases, project and case. But online, it basically shows more about uh, process workflows. Yes. So now, what isn't a workflow? If data isn't moving, you don't have a workflow. Let's say if you are managing a list of unconnected tasks, like walking the dog, go to the grocery store, pick up the dry cleaning. These aren't connected. You can do it at any time of the day. You can say, for example, you go to the grocery store at 5 in the evening. You walk the dog at 10 in the morning. You pick up your dry cleaning at 3 in the afternoon. So these aren't connected. You can do it in any series you want. You pick up your dry cleaning first, you walk your dog afterwards, you walk your dog first, pick up your dry cleaning afterwards, go to the grocery store in between any of the tasks. So these data aren't connected. For it to be a workflow, the tasks have to be connected in a way and be part of something bigger. Yes. So now the question arises is basically a workflow and a process. Process also defines the same thing. So you might think, are workflows and processes the same thing? So the answer is no, outright no. Workflows only describe the sequence of tasks. That is, workflow tells you what sequence you should make to complete the task. A process is a broader term that also encompasses the data, forms of report, forms, reports, and notifications required to get an item from start to finish in a structured environment. So in layman terms, basically what the difference between process and workflow is, workflow describes the sequence, whereas process also includes the type of data that you are taking, the type of, in which form you are taking the data, how the reports are coming for the data, the notifications generated by the data. So, and process usually also considers the starting as well as the endpoint, whereas workflows don't usually consider that, uh, except the case workflow. Yes. So, workflows and processes are very different. Let's take the example. Workflow for purchase orders might be initiator, manager approval, procurement, processing, right? But the process also involves data set of, but the process now it will also involve the data set of approved vendors, individual sequential number, procurement is notified, whether the procurement is notified right on time, budget available, and many more factors. So basically, these are not the same. Yeah. Are workflows and checklists the same thing? Again, no. You have only two things to consider. Workflow again defines the sequence, and checklist is basically an elementary version of that. Checklists only work for processes, not for the workflows. Yeah, and checklist also makes it difficult to track items that need to go back in the earlier stage of the workflow. Yeah. So after all this, you have a basic idea of what is a workflow, how many different type of workflows are there, and what workflow you should apply for your own good. Since you know the types, you know how to apply them. So that is it for today, folks. Thank you.